Okay, hi guys. From our last discussion, we ended up with ASEAN, EU, and United Nations. Okay, so now we will be discussing on the global media cultures. Okay, so I will be sharing my slide with you guys. Just a moment. Okay, so this is global media cultures, and I hope you could see the screen on your end. Now, for this topic, we have five global media cultures. One, you have oral communication. Two, script. Three, you have the electronic media. And then you also have the digital media. And you have a last one, printing press. Almost forgot that one. Okay, so for the five periods of media globalization, media has played a very big role in spreading globalization. Diba? As we have previously discussed, globalization is crossing beyond borders, and if it crossed the oceans or the seas, that's where it begins. That's why, from the history of globalization, it all started with the Silk Road, and then you have the galleon trade, which lasted for more than 250 years at most. Okay, even our country played a very big role in globalization. Okay, making a connection between Asia and Europe. Okay, so here with the technology, everything is made easy for us, no matter how far the distance and how challenging the communication is. Okay. And globalization could not occur without media since they are partners throughout the history of man. Evidently, from the caveman paintings to the papyrus of the Sumerians to printing press of the Chinese to the television of the West to Facebook of Mark Zuckerberg Media, these all made globalization possible. That's why I mentioned before that the world was a very big environment. It's a very big place for us. And now it is somewhat getting smaller and smaller and smaller, like as if we are just right next to each other. Okay. Now, the scholars believe that globalization started as early as the nomadic Homo sapiens. As people started to travel and look for food, globalization started because people always migrate looking for greener pasture. So, if you would notice in world history, civilization started near banks of rivers, okay, near where there is water supply, food, abundant food, animals. Of course, the shelter will just come along as mankind has somehow discovered how to make them. Okay. Now, globalization is also a process that has worked silently for a millennia without having given a name. Kaya nga, globalization only began during the 20th century onwards. Kaya nobody knew what globalization is kasi wala pang term na yun eh. It did not exist. Okay? People see it as somewhat like a trade. And from that trade, nagkaroon na naman connections from one country to another country, so on and so forth, hanggang sa lumaki na yung network nila. Okay? Now, it has been since with us from the beginning of history, and that a multitude of threads connects us to faraway places from the ancient time. So during the 16th century, nobody called it globalization. It's more on trade. Okay. Now, media is used to deliver a passage of communication. It was popularized in the 1920s because there was a need to talk about certain issues. especially the widespread of comic book, the birth of Mickey Mouse, collapse of stock markets, end of World War One, and all other major events, which led the experts to gather all this phenomenon and debate over the mass media. Okay, bale, from what has been discovered, what has been invented, it spread from all over the world. Okay, so experts were trying to think on how it happened. Okay, the beginnings of, for example, how the uh, of this the World War One started and how it became a World War One in the first place. Kasi it started with one country and then later on, naging lahat na ng bansa almost nakisali sa World War One. So what were the factors that involved in it? How did it happen? Okay, so this is beyond how human socializations are being explained in sociology when we group together. Okay. Now, mass media is a part of everybody's life today and in the past. The development of speech to communication is a great breakthrough in the lives of people. That's why the very first thing that we will be talking about is oral communication. Language developed a long time ago together with the development of stone tools. At first, it consisted of disorganized set of signs that could have different meanings to each other until it reached to its formal intentional format. Hence, we have our form of oral communication. So in our country, we have one language, and that is the Filipino language, Tagalog at most, that we call it. Now, from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, everyone knows Tagalog. Okay? And with our second language, the English language, which is taught in schools, almost everyone also knows how to speak and understand what the language means. But as time went by, these words that we use in our everyday lives, okay, would differ in meaning from one place to another. So these are some of the trends that occurred in oral communication. So experts were thinking how communication even started. So from simple words to a set of words combined all together to a more complex type of what do you call this communication that we know of. Okay, and as time moves along, we tend to adapt to these certain changes. Okay, from the informal to a formal language. That's why at present we also have this new terms that has come about, the slang words. Okay, a combination of two words or three words at most. Now the first form of communication is the cave painting. And the cave painting, which you knew from your art appreciation, clearly explains how we began as how we began in history. Okay, yung early beginnings of man could all be seen in cave paintings. How men hunted, how men socialized, how men survived during that time. Okay, so this was created by the Homo sapiens. Other forms also existed like storytelling, songs, chants, or drums and smoke signals. And our Philippine history tells us that there was a way of writing in our country, in the Philippines, and that is using the Alibata language, writing using the stones, wood, leaves, and yeah, you also use the ivory, but some of these materials do not last for a very very long time. But meron siyang wear and tear through, as time goes along. Yeah, that's why the oldest form of known writing that we only have in our country is the Laguna Copperplate inscription, which is a combination of Malayo-Polynesian language. Okay, it's a document about death. Okay, now storytelling is how we get to understand what happened in history. Kasi nga wala naman tayong babasahin, There were no books during the earliest time, so what we know of are storytelling. That's why the legends that we know of, the myths, these were a part of storytelling. So part of it is true, part of it is not, okay? But in most cases, this has become part of our history as well. The same thing with songs. If you would notice, Filipinos have a song for every movement. They also even have songs uh, about the dead, about animals, about weddings, about birthdays, about planting, about most everything that we do in our everyday lives. Okay, drums and smoke signals. Yeah, smoke signals will always signify trouble or help. Okay, as for drums, they are usually used in happy occasions or in war. Now, man's development of language makes them different from other species and later allows them to cover and conquer the world, okay, through communication. Through language, man also learns to cooperate and to work with each other, and this helps them pass warnings and information, as well as travel and adapt to their environment. Now, Filipinos, I could say, are very unique. Why? Because they could easily adapt to any environment, any culture, any language. Okay? They're, let's just say that our culture has a neutral touch in it at some point. Okay? Now, language also helps man to settle down, improve his economic and social and political life. That's why when we communicate, we tend to get what we want. When we communicate, we tend to understand other people as well. Okay? So, communication helps us in every aspect of our lives. If you won't speak, then nobody will know what it is that you're thinking. Okay? That is the only way that we could, help each other out. What you need, what I need, and vice versa. Improve our lives, improve our economy, improve our social well being, as well as our political life. Now, man is not only confined within his territory, but this created a cross continental trade which creates cities and later civilization. Okay, now, on script has got something to do with writing, okay, putting into words what it is that we speak. So basically, language was essential, but it was imperfect because when we communicate, okay, when we communicate a thought or an idea, when you pass it along, okay, the interpretation somehow gets messed up at the end of the line. Kaya nga, language is essential, but it is imperfect. That's why if you write it down and you pass it along, you pass that written message along to the end of the line, it never gets messed up. Okay? You will always get the exact type of thought, idea that you wanted to relay to people. So distance causes trouble. Okay? It causes miscommunication and misunderstanding. Why? Because there was no easy way of delivering your written message to different parts of the country before. There was no easy way. It will always take time. So time is of the essence here. When you deliver a message that is urgent and it reaches the other island only a few weeks later, then there would be a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. Okay, so language here relies on human memory, but human memory is of limited capacity. That's why when our brain gets tired, it eventually shuts off. Okay, but when you write down your communication, no matter how tired your brain is, the communication will still be there. Okay. Now, a more accurate script is a more accurate and elaborated system of communication. In any particular system of writing or the written means of communication, script is very particular. Okay. And the very essence of your communication is clearly stated there. Now, script makes communication easier, wider in scope, and can last longer in time. Okay, so if all those, you could just imagine that if all those written materials that our ancestors had, okay, during the 14th century, 15th century, even before we were colonized, if they were still existing, we would have known so much more of our history. Okay, because all of the history that we are learning now is just based on word of mouth, based on experience of people that are collected. But there is no elaborate thing that would clearly define what really happened in history based on historical writings, meaning yung mga sinulat during the 14th century, okay, or the 15th century. We don't have any idea about that part there, okay? But you could just imagine if those writings exist, we would have so much information. Okay. Now the first recorded writings begins in Sumeria over 4,000 years ago. And this was done through wood carving, clay, bronze, copper, bone, stones, and even the tortoise shells. Okay. So the Egyptians were the ones who learned to use a plant called the papyrus, and it was found near the Nile River. And yes, this led the organization of political, economic, cultural, and religious practices of the people. Convenient, di ba? If you will write it on a paper. Because when you put it into storage, then you will only need a small amount of space for it. However, the downside of using the papyrus is that through the wear and tear of time, it also gets deteriorated. So you could just imagine if everything was written on stones, okay, probably the archive that we would have now would be, I don't know, a wide building, which wouldn't be more than enough to store everything about Philippine history during the 14th, 15th century or before that. Okay, but with the paper, it's all compressed. Mas madali siyang itago. So how much more with our digital world today? Everything is all online. Wow, with just a USB or 1 terabyte, you could store a lot of information there. Okay? And you don't even have to stress yourselves in carrying a large amount of baggage with you. Okay? Now, this system spread and reached other parts of the world. Hence, integration among countries began, and so with globalization. Okay? Now, on the printing press, 'cause there was no means before of widely spreading one information to the rest of the world. But with the printing press, you only need one copy and then it gets recopied in mass, we call this, yeah, mass production. And then you distribute it to people whereby everybody will know the contents of an information all at once. Okay? So with the spread of the papyrus, there was a domination of information and the monopoly of information. Because the more you know, the more that you will have advantage over others. It's not a matter of who is smarter or who knows uh, a specialty or a specific thing or who is better in invention or so. Okay, so it's more on who acquires that information and if you're going to share it or not. If you're going to share it, well and good. If not, then it's up for people to get their hands on that certain information. Okay, so it's either by word of mouth or, yeah, by oral communication or by the script. That's why script and printing press would verily go along together. So we have the information and knowledge that is mostly available only to the rich during the earlier centuries. Okay? And the clergy have the ability to read and write. Now the printing press was invented in China around 4th to 7th century during the Tang dynasty. Okay, so it was the Buddhists who started rewriting religious texts, okay, and then carrying them down from the top of the mountain to the villagers, okay, giving them away so that people will know of their Buddhist scriptures. Okay, so the printing press was used for production of short Buddhist religious texts that are carried as charms by believers. So why is it that when it comes to the printing press, we always, connect this type of invention with the printing press that was created by Gutenberg? Okay, because the one that was created by Gutenberg uses a mechanical device for which mass production is way more convenient and way more, well, technically at a mass production. It could create hundreds and thousands in a matter of minutes or hours. Whereas what the Chinese did was more on writing and rewriting. Okay, but this is also a very simple technology. But when you write and rewrite, at the end of the day, of course, so you only have one person writing or probably a few Buddhist monks. So ilan lang din yung masusulat nila. Unlike for a printing press, by the end of the day, it could have probably produced thousands and thousands of printed material. Okay. So in 1939, in Germany, you have Johannes Gutenberg. He introduced the movable type of printing press. Okay. Now, the reading materials became cheap and easily circulated because prior to the uh, movable type of printing press, books are a luxury before. So if you have books, that would only mean that you are well to do or you come from a wealthy family because books are a luxury. You cannot just easily acquire them. Okay? Even paper is very expensive before, but when it comes to the movable type of printing press, everything became cheaper. Could easily be mass produced, okay, and they could easily be circulated. Now, there was also a high rate of literacy among the commoners, which followed with the spread of the printing press. Because people already know how to read, okay? They also know how to write. However, if you have not gone through proper schooling, what you know won't be, what do you call this? Won't be developed at some point. You would only know those that were delivered by way of oral communication. Whereas when it comes to reading materials, if you read a certain material, a book, a poster, or an announcement, or something that was uh posted on the walls of houses or on the streets, then it's you will have that kind of information right away. Okay? Economic, religious, and political ideas spread rapidly in different parts of the world. Now, Gutenberg Bible spread hastily and the establishment of trade links succeeded. Okay? It greatly spread the Gutenberg style of printing. Now, the most important sequence here is that one, it changed the very nature of knowledge. Okay? So, with the printing press, our knowledge became preserved and it became standardized. Meaning, what it is that I know of about contemporary world is what all other professors know as well. Yun nga lang, we need to keep on researching and finding new materials in order to uh, increase our understanding or be updated with new information. Kasi lahat ng to na nalalaman natin ngayon is still existing. It's still true. But with the changes of the time, there is always something new that gets interpreted, that gets introduced in a matter of minutes. Okay? Yes, and the knowledge is preserved. Yeah. So you also have the second important consequence on the Gutenberg printing press. Encouraged the challenge of political and religious authority because of its ability to circulate different views. That's why before the church and the state will always don't always go along with each other, but in most countries they form one institution. But at present, they will always have challenging views with each other. Okay? Now, the printing press also helps spread nationalistic ideas. So it's not only one group of people who knows it, but the rest of the country. Lalo na ngayon, if you're going to post an information on social media, it gets out to the world in a matter of split second, and then a minute, 1,000 knows about it. Another 15 minutes, thousands and thousands get informed. Then the next 30 minutes, millions of people get to have that information. Okay. And then you also have the different theories, especially the economic theories. As for the diverse culture, this also was spread by the printing press. Because each country, each social group have different culture. And then later on, they get to understand each other's culture. Kaya nga, if you would look at the world today, we may have different cultures, but we understand each other as how our culture works. Okay, some point. Now, the printing press truly nurtured globalization. And you also have the electronic media with the use of electricity. Okay, so anything, any material, any invention that uses electricity is an electronic media. Okay, so this was introduced to the people during the 19th century. You have examples like telegraph, telephone, radio, film, and television. Okay, so the telegraph was invented in the 1830s by Samuel Morse. Now, this was used as a means of communicating, especially if uh, you are at sea or in the air or in any other places. So the Morse code is a series of, it's a way of, it's like a tapping code, okay? And it requires some skill, some certain amount of skill for communication. That's why Samuel Morse created a, what do you call this, an a material that could interpret those types of uh, code. That's why it's called the Morse code. As for in 1876, you have Alexander Graham Bell. That's Bell there. Okay, so he created the telephone, wherein you send an information and then the other person receives it right away. Okay, so the concept there was very simple. I'm sure you had this activity during your younger days with the use of two tin cans and then a string in the middle. Okay, so even though you are far away from each other, you could clearly hear what the other person is saying. Okay, so Graham Bell wanted to create an invention wherein people can communicate in any part or in any place they are. Okay, so before, the telephones are part of a luxury. This wasn't even open to all of the people. Okay, because even the telephone lines and acquiring it is expensive. But now everyone is clearly connected. Okay, to the point that we don't even use the telephone anymore because nag-upgrade na ang mga tao. There are so many changes already. All of us are all of us are in our mobile phones. Okay, the telephones are only used in most cases when it comes to offices, business dealings, so on and so forth. But it's still there. Okay, so who knows? Probably 10, 20 years from now, we would have a different type of, communication process, and the telephone would somehow become obsolete. Okay, or who knows? If the regular telephone or the telephone will catch up, then we will still have this invention. Now, alongside the telephone and telegraph is the invention of the radio. Okay, you have one person here speaking, and then the rest of the country listens. So this DJ, okay, or this announcer delivers the news, the information, political critiques, religious information, so on and so forth, via the use of a radio, and people gets to hear this message right away. So consider as the wireless telegraph by 1900, meaning if you want to deliver a message, you just, you know, go to a radio station and then tell the in charge about the message, and then it gets delivered right away. Kaya nga wireless telegraph eh. Because a telegraph, you have to write it down, okay? And then you have a courier that will deliver the message. But a telegraph sometimes takes uh, days or even probably weeks during that time. And that was the fastest way of delivering a message that we know of before. Okay? Well, probably apart from using pigeons. Okay, now, by the 1920s, broadcast stations were transmitting music and news. So before, ano lang siya, it's more on mga announcements, mga current events, mga news and information, and then now they are really using it for entertainment. So if you turn on the radio, you could hear the news right away, and you could also enjoy listening to your own favorite music, whatever kind of music that is. Okay. Now, for electronic media, you also have film. Film was invented to solidify the communication. In 1870, you have the silent motion picture, and it was publicized. The only example I could think about this one here is on Charlie Chaplin. Okay, although Charlie Chaplin is around in the early 1900s. Okay. Anyway, for the silent motion picture, there was no oral communication there yet. All you see are just actors, okay, actors and actresses, okay, on the screen, okay, acting along, okay. There are no words yet. Everything was pictures. So whatever it is that you see on screen, you are the one who will interpret it. Until later on, the invention evolved, and then yeah, communication was already included in the film, meaning actors and actresses could speak to each other, okay, could exchange words, okay, and still it's in black and white. Okay. Now, in 1890, a film was developed as a mass medium, okay, because the more people see it, the more that they also get informed about what is going on or what the film is trying to say. Now, in 1920, television was created and became the most powerful and universal mass medium. Though not every household around the world has a television that most middle class have. So this was a really good thing. In 1973, a cell phone was invented. Okay, so matagal na invent ang mga cellphone, but it wasn't used by the ordinary people yet. This was used by the government. Okay. So it dominates the world and becomes the most powerful device since it can penetrate even the farthest area of the world. Now, after 1973, even the types of cellular phones I use evolved through time. Okay? When you joke about, carrying a cell phone that has a battery that's like a backpack, yeah, we joke about that. It's actually true. The military uses that, but it's a satellite phone. Okay, and probably has some, not very familiar with how it works, but probably has some connection with a cell something. Okay, so from a very big kind of phones to car phones to a very convenient and handy phone to a smartphone where you could do everything in there. Okay. Now, electronic media then facilitated the growth of interconnectedness across cosmic distance and progressive flexibility in social interaction. Okay. Now, for digital media has got something to do with the audio, video, photo content that has been encoded. So all of these information are digitally compressed. Okay. So the encoding content involves converting audio and video input into a digital media file. Okay, exactly what we are doing now. And I'm presenting to you, I mean, by way of digital media. Okay. Now, after digital media is encoded, it can be easily manipulated, distributed, and rendered played by computers and easily transmitted over computer networks. That's why from cell phones to computers, the computer before only has 2 MB uh, internal memory. Yet a lot of people could already do so much with 2 MB. Okay, so you could just imagine. That's very expensive during the earlier times. Okay. Ngayon, nobody wants that. It's too small of an internal memory. Okay. Give me a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte or even more. I'd gladly appreciate it. Okay. So that's what you call the human thirst on media is insatiable. Now, computers before are very expensive as well. Not everyone has the luxury to buy this one. Okay. Yeah. And the screens of computers before were only around 3 lines. Oh, 3 lines, but the whole computer itself is a very heavy material. Okay, so you know how it all evolved until such time we have the slim type laptops. Okay, anyway, computers transformed and innovate cultural life of the people, and it also gave us the easy access to information. Okay, give away to adaptation and adaptation of new practices. So before internet even existed, the computers was a very good way of delivering and acquiring information. How? By storing it in files. Okay, floppy disks. Okay, if you have seen one, I hope you are familiar with that. Mga floppy disks before. Okay, and yeah, you make a production of it and then sell it. Actually, it's sold in stores before if you need a file, a media file or a program. Okay, but now you don't see floppy disks being used anymore. And then after the floppy disks, you have the CDs. Okay, all information is stored in a CD, even pictures, even songs. And then later on, hindi naman siya naging obsolete. It's just that people had a different preference. Okay? Kasi nga, we already have the internet here and the emails have been widely used by people as a way of storing their information, okay? Their data, personal data, business information, so on and so forth. Okay? But before, nobody even uses that. Okay? Until such time, a lot of people were benefiting from it, and then nakisali na rin sila. Okay. Now, communication was made easier, especially with the presence of FB, Messenger before. I think the Messenger, when FB started, wasn't even that widely used because people could barely connect to the internet. Pag wala kang data, wala kang FB. Di ba? Pag meron kang data yan, that's the time you could communicate. And then the video feature was added, but people barely even use it. Okay? Because it's something new. Until such time, marami nang gumagamit, so everybody uses the video feature in communicating with their loved ones. And then you also have Skype. Skype is still there. I think prior to FB Messenger being a hit, you have Friendster. You're familiar with it. that was used in communication before, but Friendster was acquired by uh, MySpace, which is another social media account. Okay. Now, you also have Yahoo Messenger. I'm not sure if it's still there. I haven't been using it. Okay. Anyway, distance is not a hindrance anymore for us. Okay. Yeah, there is no such thing as saying, oh, I wasn't informed, I did not know about it, because all of the information is already with you. You just have to open it and read it. Okay. Especially we already have the internet. Most of the households have internet connections because the internet became cheaper. Demand and supply. The demand of the internet before was very high, but the supply was low. That's why it's very expensive. But now, uh, everything became cheaper and affordable for us to acquire. Kasi marami ng household ang connected sa internet eh. Okay, maghanap na lang ng paraan in terms of having a good signal. Okay? And then you have, of course, digital media has truly changed how our lives work. Para bang pag wala ka internet, kulang ang buhay mo, no? Naputol na lahat ng kasiyahan mo. Because all of us are connected on the media, or even if we have been going around or seeing face to face with each other, if without being connected to the social media or to the internet itself, it's like something is lacking, especially if you got used to it. Now, how much more that all of us are online? Okay, so rely we rely most of our uh, time, effort, earning, studies, learning, and everything via the use of the internet. So probably it's safe to say that the internet has become our lifeline at some point. Okay, because how else are you gonna get informed with other things if you're not connected to social media? Okay, that's why meron siyang advantage and it also has a disadvantage. That's why you need to discipline yourself on how to use the internet. Otherwise, it will only bring you a lot of stress, depression, and all other things. Okay. Now, yeah, after media culture, global media culture, please take note of the five global media cultures. One is uh, oral communication. Then you have the script, the printing press, the electronic media, and the digital, okay, media. Now, moving on to global imaginary and global village. I've already mentioned this to you before, but just to reiterate, these are all concepts that we use or terms that we use in globalization in the contemporary world. Okay, so media did not link the globe. It also helped bring fundamentally new imaginary village. Like, for example, you are in your own barangay, so am I. But if we are connected online, we have a different type of environment, right? So this is what you call an imaginary village. We don't feel like we are kilometers apart, okay, or even cities apart. Okay, when we are online, we feel so connected with the people that we are speaking or talking with, or even say video calling with, like as if they are right there in front of us. Okay, so the global imaginary refers to the globe itself as imagined community. So meaning we may be in the Philippines, but you're connected on the internet. So, like I said, that the world was big before, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because everything you need to know, all the knowledge is already there. You just have to make a search for it and read that information, of course. It will not just show up on your face and tell you. Probably if you have the uh, Google Assistant to tell you or to speak to you and read for you, we already have that kind of feature. Okay, so people will never meet face to face, but they can imagine themselves as one. Okay, so how much more na ngayon, we already have the video calling features in mostly all social media. so we could see each other face to face. Okay? Now, imagination is not a fantasy but a social fact and a staging ground for action. That's why the very concern at this time around is more on our mental health. Because the more you keep on imagining things or probably seeing the reality of it, you tend to stray away from what is actually real in your life. Okay? That's why with everything that you have gone through from 2020 to 2021, this requires a lot of strength, a lot of courage, a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, and a lot of mental strength, okay, just to survive everything. Yeah, especially that human connection, especially human touch may not be that common. Kasi mahawakan mo lang isang tapang alcohol agad, di ba? That it would rather seem aloof or odd. But hopefully, in moving forward, we would be able to reconnect ourselves to the environment and to society we're in. We won't be afraid with each other anymore. Na ay baka saan nang galing yung yung virus na yun. Ah, because I talked to this and that, so on and so forth. I mean, that's yeah, tracing everything, whoever it is that you spoke with, who you have been with, or anong ginawa mo, where you went. That's very taxing, and it's actually very stressing to think about. Okay? Konting sipon lang, nanglagnat lang, may COVID na. Oh my God. What kind of thinking it is that we have now? That's why I guess there's no other way but to keep ourselves protected at some point. Because we love this life. I'm sure you love your life too, and the life of your family members. So we need to uh, keep each other safe and get past through this whole phenomenon. And hopefully everything will be back to normal. Just hope the vaccination works. Just got myself vaccinated last Friday, so I had my 2 doses already. Okay, that's why I wasn't with you guys. Anyway, I hope that if the vaccination is available in your area, you'd also, you know, get yourselves vaccinated. Yeah, not everything is foolproof, but it's worth a try. When it's done right, nothing could go wrong. Okay. As for the rest of the information that we hear on the media, probably some of them are just for grabs. Yeah, probably for viewing. Okay, naka-play on video para mag-create siya ng political propaganda so people will keep on watching it and criticizing it. And then, uy, nakita mo yung nagpa-inject ng vaccine and then the vaccine wasn't even injected. Parang tinurok lang yung needle and then it was taken out from his skin. Yeah, from his body without the vaccine being injected. So it could have been like a propaganda, or who knows, there could have been a part two there. Okay, I mean, no truth has come around after that, but people became aware and became afraid of it. Diba? That's why last Friday I had to watch my colleagues have their shot really taken properly or given to them properly by medical professionals, and I also watched mine as well. Even took pictures or videos that these shots were really given. Okay, so yeah, it creates some kind of a paranoia. That's why truth is always very important. And with all the news and information coming around, you have to identify what is a hoax, what is real, and what is not. Okay, and I'm sure you're very intelligent enough to filter out the untruthful information that you need to filter out in your system. Okay. Anyway, now media became a vehicle to economic, political, and cultural globalization. It plays an important role in the growth of economic globalization. It also worked side by side with globalization for the creation of global capitalism and by promoting the conceptual foundation of the world's economy. So you could just imagine at this time around, if the internet service will shut down, uh, eventually you will hear a lot of complaints from all over the world. And most likely people will lose a lot of money in there. Okay? Nawalan nga lang ng ano eh, internet connection for probably 15-30 minutes due to service upgrade. So they say, ang dami mo nang maririnig posted on social media. Okay? Before it was electricity. So now on the internet, on the issue of the internet, how much more? Okay? So a lot of people are relying on it, especially that we are also, yeah, I'm doing my job via the internet and you are learning via the internet. I'm sure you could also learn without the internet because you already have information or files with you. But if without the internet, how will you be able to grab the information if you haven't downloaded it beforehand? Diba? Or if you need some clarification what it is that I have discussed and search the word or information, that would be very convenient for you. But without the internet, it's like we lose more than the lives that we lived in this world. Okay. Yeah, and you could also say that the economy is also reliant on the internet because all of the information is posted online. Okay. Now, globalization is another form of colonialism. So, if before a country colonizes another country, now globalization colonizes all of us by way of information. Okay, so this is a new guise for imperialism, since it has been the same motive, control over resources, and the right of might. So whoever has the internet power, he has the upper hand. Okay, because if without that, people will be needing him. People will be needing that kind of service, information, or power that he has. If not that, then where would we be? Okay, so probably it's some of the changes that we all have accustomed to. So books before were very important, and when it comes to acquiring information and knowledge, you have to read books. Okay, but now, even without books, you could acquire that certain amount, that certain type of skill and knowledge that you needed. All you have to do is search it on the internet, and you also have PDF files on the hard copy books that we have. Okay, in the library and probably the ones that you have in your homes. Okay, so that's how everything has become, yeah, probably you could say complex or probably simpler for all of us. Okay. Now, media has also transformed into a business that is dominated by a mass media corporation promoting their own interests at the level of individual administration. Okay. Wherever social media you go, corporations are also there trying to market their goods and their services. Now, global media is the new missionaries of global capitalism, global commercial media system to promote global markets and encourage consumer values. I'm not sure if you have watched the controversy about the internet or when it comes to the survey sites or when it comes to, yeah, the part wherein Facebook acquires all our data and information and then sells them to different companies, or probably not Facebook directly, but a third party. Yeah, a third party link that would use Facebook to acquire data and information of certain individuals, study their behavior, and then introduce or market the products from there on. Okay, there is actually a controversy on that. I I'll try to look it up because I've watched it probably like a month ago on Netflix, and it's a documentary actually. It's a documentary. Just forgot the title though. That's why if you would notice, Facebook already has a privacy notice, okay, in terms of protecting your data, and you're also taught on data privacy. you also have to protect your own data. Okay, so if whatever it is that you put online is actually sensitive information wherein any person could grab, but you have to have your own discretion. If you don't put it online, well and good. If you put it online, you have to take the risk on that part. Okay, now, what else? Yes, you also have oligopoly. Oligopoly means a state of limited competition in which a market is shared by a small number of producers or sellers. Okay, so in oligopoly, you have control and power. So if there are only a small number of producers or sellers, then yeah, a small number of producers or sellers, and if it is in demand by people, you have full control over the price. It's like talking about the sale of gasoline, diba? Gasoline actually is very expensive. Tumaas lang ng 0.50 centavos or piso, nagwelga ng mga tao eh. Okay? That's why it creates a very big impact in changing our whole economy because everything is reliant on gasoline, petroleum, yeah, the ones that we use in our cars and everything else. For oil, yes. Because the goods that we have would also increase in prices if petroleum would increase. Why? If I'd be buying petroleum, using it in my delivery truck, and I have a ban of, for example, eggs and vegetables for delivery from one marketplace to another for selling. Of course, with what I spent for delivery over the gasoline, I will be putting it on top of the cost of the vegetables and the eggs. So when I sell it, may tubo na yun. Okay? And when these market sellers sell it to local individuals, may tubo na rin yun. Okay? That's why if a good passes along from one hand over another, it increases in price. Whereas if the gasoline retains its price, if the petroleum, the oil retains its price, okay, me as the delivery person won't have to increase the selling price of my goods. Okay, hence when the end consumer will buy it, it's still gonna be cheap. Okay, so that's how it works. The idea of it. Now, for control and power, you have globalization has a great impact to economic as well as to politics. That's why if there's a problem in politics, for sure the economy will also get affected because politics and economy are always relative to each other. Okay, relative to each other. Something happens to the economy, politics comes along. It also gets affected. But if you would hear news that the politics and the economy are doing so well with each other, then you have a stable environment. Okay? Now, politics and economy becomes a steering wheel for creation of nation states. Now, for most media corporations, there are also powerful actors. Okay? Powerful actors like individual journalists, that are subject to brutal and intense intimidation as more actors contend for power. Why? Because if news and information gets a hold, is being held up, and people won't know about it, you have the journalists who would go beyond lengths just to find out the truth. Okay? So once that gets out of hand, journalists will have a way of delivering the truth to the rest of the world, and it affects all other actors at the same time. Kaya nga, when it comes to having the power, the more information or withholding the truth from the public is essential. But if you don't withhold it, well, there's a lot of consequences to that as well. It could be beneficial, it could be not. Okay, so power and control in terms of information. Okay, because information nowadays is already very, very important. It's available in any aspect of our social uh, media existence. Okay, so that ends our discussion on social media and globalization. Okay, thank you guys. I mean, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to, yeah, ask. You can post it in our G Classroom or on our chat room, okay, on Messenger. Okay, so thank you so much, guys.